hello, and welcome to the DM's Book Club, a weekly book club podcast talking about some Dungeons & Dragons, sometimes, probably not anymore, and how we might include it and improve it for our role-playing campaigns. With me, first-time caller in the DM Book Club studio is the wonderful Holly Musgrave. How are you, Holly?
Hello, I'm Holly Musgrave, it's me.
I'm
doing well. I'm so excited to be talking to you about role-playing games today.
Yeah.
This is such a fun thing that you do, and I'm so excited to come and chat with you about role-playing games. It should be really fun. Do well. How are you doing?
I'm doing much better for seeing you. Like, Holly and I, we've done some role-playing game stuff together for the RP Geeks, and Holly is obviously, if you've seen any of Chaotic Neutral stuff, and also your own stuff on the internet, you know, wonderful streamer, but also into role-playing games as well. So let's start at the origin story. How did you get into role-playing games? Where did it start for you as a player, or even as a GM? I don't know if you got in there first as a GM or a player, or just like, I've just got to roll dice and see what happens, you know? Honestly,
it's a really good question, because I can't quite remember. And I think each time I tell this story, it goes in different ways. I think it genuinely started with jealousy. I knew some friends of mine at university.
Well, I love that as a... so let me tell you, it's jealousy.
I heard about this role-playing games thing. I heard about this Dungeons and or Dragons. And I was like, 1 minute, this sounds like absolutely my thing. How dare I not have been playing this the whole time? And I was at university, and a few of my friends were playing it, and really, really intermittently and very, very, very casually. Like, it wasn't like a 10-year campaign where they met every Thursday. It wasn't like that kind of thing. But every now and then they would get together and play some Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah. Sometimes they'd roll dice. It was very loose. But I never got to play. And that wasn't because, it wasn't because they didn't invite me or they kept me out or anything. It wasn't like that. I just didn't really ask. I didn't know how to begin. Yeah. There was one time I was at a friend's house, same friend who used to play, and they were kind of playing again one of these really loose D&D sessions that my friend was DMing, and he's like, "Hey, yeah, do you want to play?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'd love to play." And he was like, "Well, this guy's not here today. If you want, you could kind of be his character for a bit. That would be fine." And I was like, "Yeah, okay." Cool, I'll do that, and kind of mainly was like an audience really to the session with a little bit of stuff, and loved it. But unfortunately, there was no home for me there to really do it regularly, and I didn't know anybody who played Dungeons and Dragons at all, or any role playing game for that matter. I didn't know anybody, and then I went to drama school, and I was all in acting training, and I didn't have time to think about anything other than earning money and training as an actor. And then years pass, and eventually, a couple of things happen at the same time. One is I discover Call of Cthulhu. And I go, I don't know if I'd be confident enough to suddenly Dungeon Master Dungeons and Dragons, but I reckon I can do Keeping of Arcane Lore. I reckon I could do that. I've written bits of horror prose. I reckon I could do that. I reckon I could create an immersive storytelling atmosphere and follow these mechanics. So I started kind of getting ready to GM Call of Cthulhu, to keep Call of Cthulhu for the first time. And at the same time, I met Tom, who sometimes does NLB stuff. And I told Tom the same story that I've just told you about, having played a bit of Dungeons and Dragons, but not really. And I'd never rolled a character before. And he went and just grabbed a bunch of books. I went, right, well, do you want to? And I was like, yeah, I really want to. Yes. Like, well, then let me get my books. And we just sat down and we rolled my first D&D character. Oh,
that's so cute.
And it was a beautiful moment. I still love that Wild Magic Sorcerer so much. And one day I will play her in something. And it will have to be GM by Tom, because Tom came up with ideas then that I still don't know. But yeah, then at the same time I went on tour, and at that point I played Call of Cthulhu as well. And I went on tour with a show in Jersey. And there was a lot of downtime. There was a lot of showtime, but there was also a lot of time on an island where I didn't know anybody apart from the other, cast members.
Castmates, yeah.
And I started GMing Call of Cthulhu then, just as a bit of there was only 3 of us in the whole production, really, in the whole cast. There was there was also a director and a producer and an incredible stage manager, Scott, who I loved to bits. But in terms of people who are regularly together, there were only 3 of us in the cast. And I was like, I reckon I could keep for 2 people. I could keep track of 2 people's sanity. That makes sense. I'm sure.
Sure,
and
yes.
I ran the haunting with them, which is the beginner scenario in the starter set.
The starter set and quick start as well. Yeah,
the quick start, exactly. And I loved it. And then by that point, I think I had maybe run it before, because by that point, I'm definitely putting tarot cards into Call of Cthulhu. So one thing I do with Call of Cthulhu is I love running it with tarot cards. And I'm actually writing a series of scenarios at the moment that are all based around the major arcana of the tarot deck.
Oh, so cool.
But it started there, of us in the back of this, it wasn't even a theatre, it was like a town hall. And we were in like one of the green rooms, basically, in this town hall, dressed as Vikings.
Sorry, let me just like, I painted the image in my head, and now I'm like, yes.
The Viking bit.
Yeah, Viking bit, yeah.
And yeah, we were playing the haunting and doing tarot readings at the table. Essentially, I just reframed it a bit so that there could be readings as part of the scenario. Changed a few other little bits about it, but otherwise just kind of stood it up and ran it. And so much of it includes, it was like, for me, it was an introduction of how much of it is to do with improv, how much of it is to do with immersive storytelling, how much of it is to do with kind of yes-anding what characters give you, what players give you. And I just absolutely loved it. And I knew I would love it, because I don't think you have to be an actor at all to play role-playing games. You really don't. But I think if you are an actor, you definitely would, you know?
Yeah.
Because you love playing a role already. You do it for your job. And maybe that means you don't want to do it when you're off work. But for me, it was like, well, I've done improv. I've done acting. I definitely know this is exactly the kind of thing I love.
Yeah.
And I finally got to do it. And I've definitely found that the best, since then I've played a bunch of different role-playing games, including more D&D. But I definitely find the best way for me to get a game on the table is if I GM a new Cthulhu scenario, people will come over.
Yeah, that's amazing. Because for me, just reading through the Keeper's Guide and the Investigator's Guide as well, they feel so intimidating. I've run the quick start scenario of the Haunting as well.
Yeah,
and I've run in the back of the Keeper's Guide the Amidst the Ancient Trees, because that's one of my favourite scenarios.
Oh, it's awesome, yeah.
But yeah, the books themselves, when you open them, I don't know if it's because of the font or the brown pages or the fact that one of the chapters is just one of the stories from Lovecraft, and you're like, what's this got to do with anything? They feel like really intimidating books, and I've finally gone through and read them, like just as a general thing for us to talk about, and I'm just like going like, damn, I don't know if I'd recommend reading through them necessarily unless you were fully in. So yeah, how did you find? So you said this is what brought you in. What was it? Was it because you were interested in the Eldritch horror stuff, or was it just the system? Yeah, I'm really curious. Yeah,
honestly, I think the system of rolling the 2 d10s, your d100, is really straightforward to introduce to new players. So one of my problems, as kind of I was saying earlier, not so much now, because now I know loads of role players, but at the beginning was I didn't know that many role players. So if I wanted to play a role-playing game, it was something I could explain very quickly to a group of people.
Yes.
And Call of Cthulhu, I think, apart from the character creation, which is a bit crunchy, I do love the character creation.
Yes.
But if I'm not going to make somebody sit down and start doing maths when I'm trying to persuade them to play a role-playing game. But if I generate some characters for them, or I've got some pre-gen characters already rolled up, all I have to really tell them to start is, okay, here are your skills. You've got a number in each of those skills. You roll below it, success. You roll above it, fail. A couple of other things we'll get to, but that's where we start, right? Easy
enough.
And, you know, a lot of role-playing games, you know, have a simple system like that, whether it's the D20 or whatever it is. But it was the simplicity of, here are the numbers on the page and your skills. Tell me what you're doing. Oh, that sounds like you're trying to pick a lock. Is that lock pick? Or that sounds like you're trying to charm me. Is that charm? That would mean you will use your charm skill. Now you just roll those same 2 dice you've been rolling this whole time, and we just check if it's below or above. I think that was the main appeal to me, was 100%. I can tell a story, but I need to be able to persuade people to roll the dice without being too intimidated. I think role-playing games in general can feel so intimidating to new players. And it's the last thing that I ever want to contribute to, because it definitely stopped me for a bit. Yeah. And yeah, I don't want it to stop anybody else, because they're joyous, and anyone who can get into it is so in for a good time. Yeah. So anything I can do to like take any of those walls down really is a big thing. I think the other thing was, the quick start guide is so short that providing you've read that a few times, it's 12 pages maybe. Yeah. Once you've got to grips with that, you can basically just pick up a scenario and see what it says. I think that's the main thing I would do, is like reading a scenario, not necessarily reading like Lovecraft's original work, and not necessarily reading every page of the Keeper's Guide, but just picking up Blackwater Creek and going, okay, I'll read Blackwater Creek. I could run this, you know, or like picking up, you know, whatever and going, I could run this actually. I could run this. And I think I definitely find reading scenarios really just like they have everything I need in them.
Yeah.
A good set of scenarios will tell me, you know, okay, this is a good point. Remember madness at this point. And the more I run it, the more I'll be able to kind of freestyle some more madness moments. But they'll have that information for me as a keeper as I go. And I can even kind of go room by room so often in Call of Cthulhu. Like, okay, they've made it to the forest in Blackwater Creek. That means I'm looking at the forest section of the book now. And I can kind of just be refreshing it as the role-playing's happening. And just make sure that, you know, there isn't anything else that I can trigger while they're here and that kind of thing. So I find it from that perspective a really lovely way into GMing for like new GMs. Not necessarily like the only place that new GMs could start, but for me it just really appealed.
It's really lovely, I think, because the if you're not put off by the denseness of those guides, there is such a slew of incredible scenarios, as you said, like the community around it. You know, you go on to like Drive for RPG, or, you know, you go into any sort of, certainly any shortlist, and there's like always so many scenarios that are coming up constantly. And yeah, I think what I like about it is that there's this inherent mystery element to it, which all the players know has some eldritch stuff behind it, but your characters don't necessarily know unless they're like repeat investigators. And I agree. I'm always a GM, which is I like having a scenario as a base thing, and then, like you said, like improving off it, but always being able to go back to it. Just because I know, and as you know from doing improv as well, it's like we can improv to the moon, but then if you look at it too closely, it all sort of falls apart a little bit, and you're like, no, don't look, we had fun, didn't we? Whereas here, it's like, it's always satisfying because you're like, oh, here's this clue we might have missed, and we did see these things, and you know, and at the end of the day, you know, it is your players, you know, who are very fragile against unknown forces, and that's terrifying, but also it's fun because you uncovered something, and you went in too deep. And that's always the same story, right? And there's something about it where I think players, when they lean into it and into those tropes, they get so much out of it, and like they feel very cool for finding out stuff, but at what cost? You know, sanity, you know, all that sort of stuff. So
that's so true. I absolutely, I think you just nailed it there. Like, because I love fantasy. I love high fantasy. I'm not going to be like, I don't like high fantasy. I really do. It appeals to me so strongly. I will play any game that has a high fantasy element. I love high fantasy. And maybe that's more for me as a player, even. Maybe that's me as a player. But me as a GM, and it's interesting as well, because I do a lot of teaching English and teaching creative writing. And I always think a really good place to start is mystery and horror. And I don't necessarily mean like I'm talking like really gruesome horror with like young people. That would be inappropriate. But what I mean is the idea of building tension and affecting your reader or your player, like depending on whether we're talking about creative writing or GMing. Well, horror and mystery are a really good place to start with that relationship between writer and audience, or writer and reader, or writer and player. Because in horror and in mystery, our job is to affect emotionally the people who kind of swim in that story. I think as a result, it's one of the most straightforward places that I can land in terms of writing and GMing, because I know my job is to affect my players by making them interested in the mystery and scared by what's happening around them, to give them that creeping sense of dread that is still going to compel them to go forward, which feels like such a clear objective. And I love that they are just humans in Call of Cthulhu. Again, I love high fantasy. I'm not saying anything against high fantasy.
Massive disclaimer. Cancel Holly. Yeah, absolutely.
No, I love high fantasy. As a player, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yes.
There is something as well, just as an alternative, just from a role-playing perspective, of you are quite limited. And it reminds me of acting as well, of like, really great theatre, kind of, you're aware of its limits as you're watching it, and you're aware that it's really pushing against its limits as you're watching it, but it's still going to push them. It's going to go as big and as crazy as it can within the box that it's been put in. And I think there's something about, okay, I can't just swim across the ocean to get away from this eldritch being. I can't just jump out of this 7-story window and roll to land. I'm a human being.
Yeah.
I'm so limited in what I can do. And as a result, my role-playing choices are more creative. They're more interesting. They're more compelling. They're more real. And I do love that about Call of Cthulhu. I also think it makes it easier for lots of people to role-play again for the first time. And so much of my journey into GMing was, persuading friends of mine who have gone, oh, dice are nice, but I don't actually know what this Dungeons and Dragons thing is. And me going, yeah, well, you know what? We could play a game of something like a one-shot, like a horror one-shot. It doesn't have to be too horror. It could just be a mystery, whatever. And I think playing an ordinary human who's maybe a photographer or secretly a criminal or, just a detective, I think that is a little bit easier for people as well who haven't role-played before.
100%. I think there's and going back to, because I'm a big horror fan as well, and trying to convince people that horror isn't that gruesome body horror and everyone's dying or anything like that, but you could have that creeping horror, but also horror for all ages. So again, talking about, I know you're sort of joking about inappropriate for children and stuff like that, but one scenario that comes to mind, which maybe you have read, there's one called Unland, which is Funland with the F taken off.
Oh, I don't know it.
I'll see if I can find it afterwards. It's in a collection of stuff, but it's the idea of very much Stand By Me. There's some kids that they go back to this fun place where they went, and one of them is missing. And when they go back to the theme park, they get trapped in there.
I have heard of this. Yes.
Yeah, and it's brutal because it covers on certain themes that are and you, the players, are going oh, this is not, and again, it's that sort of above the table, make sure everyone's okay with it. Yeah. But I remember listening to it and going oh, of course you could have Call of Cthulhu that as younger characters. You could have that sort of kids on bikes, aspect. And as long as everyone's okay with it, you can explore these stories, these sort of almost Stephen King-like stories.
Yeah.
And bad things can happen to a younger audience, but then we're safe in it and we're making sure that we do it justice and we tell these stories. And I just think it's just such a fun way to explore those very horrible themes in a safe space for it. Unland really, when I was reading it and there was an actual play of it, I was like, damn, it gripped my heart a bit. Going oh no, what's going to happen to these kids in this theme park? And all these things they're trying to, the players are trying, they see, a horrible thing, and then they're trying to translate it for their characters who then are a younger person who might not understand. And I think there was a home rule they had about understanding the full and how it changes them. As a sort of a mark. And again, it's all these things. I just thought, what a cool way to do it through this Call of Cthulhu, because it's the horror really, like you said, there's this alternate reality that we have. So it's modern day or it's 1920s, but something impossible we cannot explain is on it.
Yes. Yeah.
And how we deal with that. And I think it's we can ground our characters in this. But whatever this is, even I can't explain, or I can't, you just, I think one of my favourite things of being a keeper when I'm doing it is when I explain something and I can't visualise it because it's so impossible. And you just see people's faces going whatever they're seeing or whatever they're trying to see, they're I can't comprehend it. That's terrifying, how can I role play, or how can I what's my next move as a character to do this,
From a role playing perspective as well, and from a storytelling perspective, these things are quite difficult to describe visually. And if I had to draw a picture of Hasta or it would be really, well, it wouldn't be impossible, it has been done, but there's something, or a crawling one, I could do it, but it would kind of make it less scary. Yeah. Whereas if I'm sitting there being you're looking at this woman's hand and it seems to be bulging underneath the glove she's wearing, kind of like it's swollen, and then move on. That is so much more. It's scary and interesting and descriptive in a sense, because our brains are able to just fill in those gaps for us.
Yes. And
there's something we fear in that, in the way that nothing else really can, in the way that the written word, once it's cold and written down, it can't extend and be flexible like that. But our brains can. It's why us consuming any kind of art, whether it's, prose or a film or a beautiful piece of, imagery, our brains are going to run with that forever. And it's whatever. It's why one of the reasons why role-playing games are so great is because we can literally form them around our brains communally with our brains at the same time. And it means that experience can be so much wider.
Yeah.
So many other interactions with different kinds of storytelling. I love that.
just going back to the tarot card stuff again, I just have this visual. I do find it funny that you were in a small town that no one knew anything. So, well, better play Call of Cthulhu. It's very all those vibes, right?
In autumn as well, it's like everything's decaying and dying. It's like, oh, it was great.
I think you set yourself up. It was all the signs were there, Holly, for you to be.
Yeah, we had a fireplace in our Airbnb basically. I was like, well, a fireplace. We must play role-playing games.
Well, yeah, get the little whiskey out.
I think we need snacks
yes.
and we need dice. That's what we need.
But I find it interesting I think Call of Cthulhu, out of any other role-playing game that I know of, obviously I know D&D does it a little bit, is that it feels like, yes, we can have props, we can have a bit of performance if you're in person. So that idea of the tarot cards, that feels like very tactile. I've seen, like, I think, really early Critical Role one shot they did was Call of Cthulhu, and they had a whole ton of props to like give people and stuff like that. And that was the first time I'd ever really seen
show one. I love that.
I think so. Yeah, it's a really early on one. I think that Taliesin was running, and they had like a whole. Yeah,
that is. Yeah, I think that's it.
I do feel Call of Cthulhu, like, again, all games can be played in person or online, but if you're playing in person, if you're able to give stuff, like, and there's always handouts, like you always things you can give. I love doing that and be able to, people can look at stuff and like try and work out and like have something like in their hands because it gets that immersion going. So I love that idea of like you doing the tarot cards for that. Was that something that was, you said that was natural, you wanted to add to it? What did you think about that?
So partly, I read tarot anyway, right? So I have tarot cards with me most of the time. Lots of people want me to read their tarot, so I often will have tarot cards with me in some form. And that was, so my familiarity with the tarot, I think, helped for sure. But the other thing is, there are so many scenarios. Like, one of the cool things about the Cthulhu universe is so much of it touches on real in hyphens, occult practice. And it's in Call of Cthulhu, in this Eldritch universe, that stuff isn't what we think it is. It's actually connections to these Eldritch gods. But these things still have like a profound effect on people, people's belief or not belief in them. And people have very strong reactions for and against things like tarot cards or, like a scrying disc or whatever. People will see things like that and they will have associations, reactions. And even if that reaction is, oh, I'm not into that kind of stuff, that's still a reaction. People see these objects as having more weight than, say, your average tablespoon or whatever.
Yeah.
So part of it was that, and part of it was that so much of that is already in like the lore of Call of Cthulhu too. But also, it's also because I'm familiar with these objects, so I feel comfortable with them, and I feel comfortable to use them as tools to improvise around. I think a lot of people would feel differently to me on that.
Sure.
I think that's totally okay as well. And I always will check in. I won't just bring the tarot cards to the table and be like, right, we're doing a reading now, because some people would be deeply uncomfortable with that.
Of course, yeah.
And we always establish, what that reading is and what it, means for, are we doing this in character? Are we doing this for us? Like all of those things. But the main reason I did it is the tarot itself as a story deck is so rich with imagery and idea and plot. It follows the journey of the acolyte, the fool, who is our first card, 0, the fool or the madman in its original translation. And we follow the fool all the way through on their path to enlightenment, basically. And that path to enlightenment can happen in loads of different ways. They can go straight to enlightenment. They can go to the devil and then to the hanged man and then to enlightenment. They can go to enlightenment and then go to the devil and then go to the lovers and then, go to the Wheel of Fortune. And it's just that all of those cards, especially the Major Arcana, the Minor Arcana is also fantastic, but the Major Arcana, those images like the hanged man, the empress, the high priestess, judgment, death, they're such famous and multifaceted ideas. People have so many different interpretations, assumptions, beliefs in all these things that it always creates really just like fertile ground for conversations about the unknown, which is so much of what horror is about.
So much what Cthulhu is about as well.
So much of what Cthulhu is about. And, okay, well, I've just flipped this death card. That's not a problem, is it? Maybe it is a problem. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. What could this mean? Could it mean this? Oh, it must be this thing that's just happened. Or is it? Is that the death card done? It just provides really interesting areas, I think, to role play. And I love having props.
Yeah.
I think having something real in the room with you is so lovely because, again, nothing wrong with playing online. I love playing online. And I think if it's your only way to play, you play, don't let it stop you. But there is something about having these moments be really special moments in the room with the people you're playing with that is so against, it's so anti, and it's so anti kind of large scale art. Like if I think about Hollywood, for example, or any of that stuff, again, not that it's wrong, but like role-playing games are the antithesis of that. You telling a story that you're most of the time not getting paid to tell to, you know, 6 of your friends who have come over to suspend disbelief and sharing that story with you and tell that story with you. It's the antithesis of any of that stuff. So the more energy and interest and like specialness you can bring to that moment, an investment really. And I don't mean investment in terms of money, but in terms of like your energy and your curiosity is so special and so rare by modern standards that you craft something even more beautiful together, I think, so much of the time.
It's slightly different to that board game night where like you can all play a board game and you'd be like, yeah, we didn't enjoy it, or we need a couple of goes at it. Whereas I feel sometimes people will go, I don't know if how much should I invest in this? How long are we going for? So again, that idea of setting this, like you said, it's just a one shot. We'll just have fun with it. Or if we're going to do we're going to have a couple of nights and then we'll see how it goes. Because I agree. I think that a lot right now, there's obviously a lot of investment, usually from Wizards of the Coast, and we're like, right, we're going to capture this gameplay and we'll monetize it and we'll do something else. It'll be a film. It'll be a TV show. We'll do our own thing. And they'll capture a version of it, but there's nothing like being able to role play with your friends and be like, you had to be there. There was this moment where this happened. We didn't know what was going to happen, and it was really scary. And then Holly pulled out the tarot deck, and this happened. And it's and for you, you're reliving that moment and you're living it. And for those people on the outside, they're getting your excitement for it. But to be there and like feel it in the room is so different, right?
I totally agree, and that stuff should always be. Because I totally agree with you, and I think those other things, when they're made, like these external like streams or objects or merch or movies, whatever they are, they're going to always be served best when they're made for the community that's already playing and loving this thing, that's made with the love for that thing, so that when you see it, you're like, oh, of course, this is supplementary to my love for it. I love this because I love this thing and it was made with that love in mind. I think that works. Whereas, selling it as a product for people who are more invested in, like, say, the celebrity of it or whatever, it doesn't always work. No. And I think it's why so many places have been incredibly successful, is because they capture that love and they are making it for a community. And it makes so much sense, because it's like, of course that's going to work, because you're sharing your love for the thing you love that is the same thing that these people love, and they're also invested in that with you. So it's like a sharing of this. It's a sharing of what is role-playing games, as what is D&D or what is Call of Cthulhu, as opposed to like a sharing of the idea of, hey, do you like this thing?
Yeah.
Would you like to learn more about it? It's not that. It's something that's made for people who love it, with their love, at the forefront. I think that is absolutely when it works.
I have a question to you, as someone who's run a lot of Call of Cthulhu, and I know, and I don't expect you to be the expert on this or anything like that. If I ask you and you're like, oh, I'm not so sure, that's fine, because one of the biggest critiques of Call of Cthulhu is this idea of having madness as a mechanic, as a negative thing, and obviously written at a time where these things were what they were, and nowadays obviously talking about madness and insanity, they're not necessarily politically correct terms, and and I just wonder for you, when you're dealing with those mechanics and with players, like how do you go about it in a sensitive way? Because I assume you're not going to be like, haha, you're now mad. Obviously that's not the kind of person you are, but genuinely it's one of those things I not come across it as a hard thing, because obviously it is a consequence for a failed role that these things happen. So how do you deal with like madness and insanity in your games?
Oh, it's such a good question. It also massively varies depending on the group, because for some groups they'd be like, yeah, of course, fine,
I'll take it.
And you're like, okay, sure,
I don't have feelings.
Maybe we should still talk about it.
Yes.
And then there are some groups for whom I've run. In fact, in most of my Call of Cthulhu groups, real mental illness is in the room with us, and that's something we're all aware of and very sensitive about. And it's drawing the lines between that and what's happening in the game is really important. Checking in with how people are, regardless of where they stand on like that kind of spectrum or not, is important. Anyway, it's a really good question, but I'll give you how I would generically approach it.
Yeah, of course.
But so much of it is, with the nuance of whoever is in the room with you.
100%.
And luckily, when you're in the room with people, you get the chance to kind of have a chat about it first.
Mm-hmm.
But my main thing is differentiating between it and real madness, that this is not real madness, this is play madness, and kind of acknowledging that it comes from a world that is not sensitive to what would have been in those times real madness. For want of a better term, the entire group of illnesses and things that people were suffering with that they were not receiving adequate care for. Even things that weren't illnesses that were diagnosed as illnesses and things like that. So we always go into that. The other thing that's really interesting as part of this, which I think is potentially even more upsetting for people who play role-playing games, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I think it's the bit that I always want to check in with especially people who've role-played before. There is a thing when you have a bout of madness, or when you have your immediate reaction to losing sanity, where you you lose your autonomy for a moment. The keeper takes it for a second, and it can be just for a second. You pull the trigger, you drop the gun and run, you scream. Those moments where the keeper will tell you what you do, which is something that doesn't happen in a lot of role-playing games and is a hard boundary for a lot of role players. And I totally understand why.
100%, yeah.
It's something that is common in Call of Cthulhu because it's those moments. And for me, they are key to Call of Cthulhu. I think they can absolutely be worked around. I don't see a reason why you couldn't accommodate a player who doesn't want that. There's absolutely ways of working around them. But one of the reasons why I think they're really valuable in Call of Cthulhu is the stories of Call of Cthulhu are you essentially losing your humanity to go towards the Eldritch, right? Losing your control. What does it mean to lose your control? And that has to be something that I think you have to feel comfortable exploring in those games a little bit. And you don't have to feel comfortable exploring them every day. I wouldn't be comfortable exploring them every day, but on a day where I am, I can explore them in these games. And it means knowing the risk when I roll that I could be about to lose control over this character that I love and who makes choices that I think I understand. And then see them make a choice that didn't come from me and that I don't understand. Makes sense in a world where somebody is becoming lost to something that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. It's not, you can't fathom it. And as a result, we change in a way that is different to what we know, who we are. We are altered. We meet lots of people in Call of Cthulhu who are not themselves for lots of reasons. So I think it's part of the world and part of the characters. It can be dealt with sensitively. It should be dealt with sensitively, and it should always be something, like, depending on the scenario and how madness is going to work in that scenario, I will always check in with the players. Sometimes I'll ask them more specific questions than otherwise. Also depends on who I've got playing, how well I know them, all of these things. But I do think it is something that can be brilliant when people are fine with it and comfortable. But that's key. They have to be fine with it. They have to be comfortable. There's no point doing it otherwise. I'm not saying there's no point playing Call of Cthulhu otherwise. You would just play it in a different way. There's no point putting them in a position where they're uncomfortable, because then what are you getting? What are you getting at all? And also, it's not right. It's not right to do that. But also, the whole reason you're doing it is to create this story, and the story ends there at that moment that you make that person uncomfortable, because they're no longer in it. They are themselves again. They're not in their role anymore. They're thinking about their safety and they're thinking about their comfortability, as they should be if their boundaries have been.
100%. Yeah. I like how you. I loved how you put that, because it is, because for me, I would encourage players to play it at the top of their intelligence as players. Like, is that sort of thing, like, we all like leaning into these sort of tropes of like, the hardened investigator, I must find out, getting obsessed with like solving the case. But like, we don't want them to do like if madness they get or insanity, you don't want them to be making fun of it or like, punching down on it. Like you said, like, we don't know who else is in the room of us that may themselves have a mental illness or know someone and are affected by it, and this is their escape from that sort of thing. But be again, I like that of like checking in with people on the same page, and as an ongoing checking as well, because things change. It is weirdly, it's a shame that the as far as I can tell, I've not read any updated versions of stuff. There's like a little bit like, it's a bit of a dark world, but not so much about like, hey, think about safety tools or anything like that. A lot more RPGs nowadays are doing it.
And I've definitely found that in stuff that like I write, I always put it in. It's always in there. And that kind of thing can quite easily be updated. And, you know, it's something, whenever I've written, because I've, you know, written my own scenarios for various like things, I always put in a paragraph on it. Always. Especially like when I was writing The Fool, the one that I ran on Summoning Circle, which is the first of this, like, it's the introductory scenario into the tarot scenarios I'm writing, which is 22 scenarios, one for each of the major arcana. You have to start with the Fool. The Fool's the starter scenario. You have to end with the World. The World is the ending scenario.
Oh,
you can be led by readings then from then on. Like, we've picked the Hanged Man, we're doing the Hanged Man next, or we've picked the we've picked the Hierophant, we're going to do the Hierophant next. But when I was writing The Fool down, one of the things I was saying is, hey, there is body horror in this, specifically this kind of body horror. Check in with your players if they are comfortable with that. You don't have to say, how would you feel, and then describe this horrible body horror. That's not going to work. That's the opposite. But just be like, hey, how do we feel about body horror? Any, you know, lines and veils there, you know, classic safeguarding tools, or like, is there any specific part that you don't want to hear? Like, so often it's eyes. People are like, not eyes, please. Or, you know, I've had people say not hands, you know, even like that kind of thing is specific to each individual.
Yeah.
I always write it down. It's always really important. And I do it with madness and like the autonomy of players, of like, remind your players that you might take over them for 10 seconds when they go mad. And I always write that stuff down because it's important. And I do it even with themes. Like, this has a theme of misogyny. This character is misogynistic. This is why they're misogynistic, and this is why it's important for us to investigate that in this scenario, and why it can be empowering for us to investigate that in this scenario. But you may have players who just don't want to deal with misogyny in this scenario, in which case there are ways you can change it. Here are the ways you can change it, or there's no reason that the players have to deal with the misogyny. The person can, you know, don't let it be a reason for you to be misogynistic to your friends.
100%.
It's just that the world is misogynistic, and this player, this NPC, for example, has a misogynistic view about this other thing, not your players. There's no reason for you to be like, well, this person's going to be, you know, sexist to you. Yeah. Why are you doing that? Why do you want to do that to your friends? And you can build a world and build an interesting character without doing that. It reminds me of teaching like creative writing to kids when they're like, cool, can I put like loads of guns in this? And I'm like, I mean, look, if you put loads of guns in it and you just say, okay, there was a man and he had 40 guns and he shot all those guns, the end. Is that a good story? No. I'm not interested in it at all. You know, there's no tension. If you tell me a really interesting story about these 40 guns, where I'm really intrigued about why this person's got them, where they're hiding them, all of these things, sure. But so often it's an excuse to say that I've done that work, because how could it be a boring story? It's got 40 guns in it. It can still be a truly boring story. So like, usually my rule with children is absolutely no, you can't do that, because I don't want to read a story about 40 guns. That's like Teacher Holly is like, no, you can't do that. But also like Writer Holly is like, no, because it's a shortcut to creativity. And I'm not saying it can't be done, but so often, especially with kids in creative writing, it is a shortcut to doing the interesting work of creating interesting storytelling, whether that's horror or whatever. It's same, I think, for GMing, of like that kind of sensationalist, upsetting your players. You should be able to create a story without doing that. Yeah,
it's that sort of why today sort of thing in improv, right? It's like, why are we seeing this scene in an office with two people? Why is this firing? Whenever we get the suggestion of office, it's always someone's going to be fired. Why is this firing? Why are we seeing this? Why am I writing it? And it's not, to get that unusual twist on it, or that, what is it about the 40 guns? What is it about this story about the investigators that is different, and that we want to feel for them and we want to get included in them? Not these, it's horrible things happen to them. It's like, there's got to be something more than that, because horrible things, it's in the world right now, lots of horrible things happening. So we want to make it, making it matter is like you said, getting the reader interested, getting the players interested, so they want to continue, rather than going like, this is a horrible thing.
Well, that's it. You want them leaning in, right? Not leaning out. So even when you're like, so I write a lot of body horror. I say all of this.
Don't do this, but I'll do it. Yes.
Okay. I write some really like gnarly body horror. Okay. I love gnarly body horror. again, whenever I run a scenario, I will heavily check in with my players and I will say, hey, this scenario has body horror. Would we rather play something else? You know?
Yeah.
Is anybody not feeling it today? That's totally fine. You might not want, a lot of description of really gnarly body horror today. That's okay. Totally fine for that to be the case. But it is something I do. But the way that I write it, hopefully, who knows? But the way that I write it, hopefully, is from the viewpoint of leaning in. Like, so the kind of descriptions that I'd write or the kind of notes I would give myself in descriptions I want to tell is all about you come into this room and you can't quite see what you're looking at. The light is in the wrong place. Well, how is the light there? It's so much of it is from that place of questioning and bringing in, because the players should be leaning in, right? They should be wanting to contribute and build into this, and they want to get closer and they want to do all of those things to investigate. And that doesn't mean it can't be truly horrifying stuff, but it shouldn't be stuff that's just for shock value, because it's just going to turn people off and push them away, and that's the opposite.
They know it's like a haunted house, like, like if you go to LA or anything like that, and you have to go through it. And you often have gone in willingly, and something's going to jump out. You the player knows this, but you have to do it in order for the story to continue. And then it doesn't jump out at you in front of you, it comes from the side, or it comes from above. And it's, I think it's that having that, you're trusting the GM to make sure keeps you safe, but also scares you, and you as a player has also got the role of like helping to continue the story and making sure everyone else is on the same page and like checking in. So not only the safety stuff, but also be like, hey, we gotta, we can all. I mean, there's lots of yucks that happen in Call of Cthulhu. Don't get me wrong. These things happen, but then when something truly scary happens, you'll go, oh no. I get my gun. Oh no, sanity. Oh god, it's. But also,
no, that's happened to this guy. That's why. That's what this thing was earlier. That's what it should be. Not like, oh god, what's happening? What happened to that guy? That's horrible.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. Of like, you're watching it and you go, oh, this actually tells me the thing I need to know about the thing I'm about to face. This has got the last piece of the puzzle. This is what happened to this person. This is why. And of course, it should be, horrible and, unknown, and all of those feelings that are really just like interesting to investigate as a group of people in Call of Cthulhu. But it shouldn't. At no point should I just be going, and watching my friends kind of close their eyes and cover their ears. That's the opposite of what I want. And I say that as somebody who I have written, 3 or 4 scenarios that include like really nasty body horror. It's just, I think it's so much of it is in the way of the telling.
Yes.
And like every single time I have alternatives. So if somebody comes in and says, actually, I don't want to see any bodily violence. I have ways of adapting it. And it should be just as good without it. And equally, if somebody comes in and says, I don't want to see this thing happen, I can be like, cool. Yeah, that thing won't.
Yeah, because you're not caught off guard going like, oh God, I need to think of something else. You already have the alternatives there, so you can just pull from that and adapt as needed. Yeah, I always appreciate that, because if somebody doesn't like something, that's totally, absolutely, we stop play or we pause or whatever, and then I have to go, oh God, I need to think of something that's not the, it's like that whole thing of like, don't think of Black Cat, and you're like, that's all I could think about, so you're like, okay, so having, I love that you include the alternates, just to help the GM. So it's like, oh, okay, and if the GM's like, oh, I don't really want to do that, they can plug that in, the players don't, it's just always good to have those options, because maybe they're like, actually, none of these work, and they're like, great, then we've given those options at least, so then it's up to you to combine them or jump off them or whatever it is you need to do.
The other thing that can happen is a door might just not open, and the horrible things behind the door. It's like, oh no, this is super jammed shut.
Oh, super jammed shut. Oh, yeah.
You can't get in there and see that horrible thing that you told me earlier that you don't want to see.
Yeah.
That's weird. But you hear this noise from behind it, and the noise sounds like something like this. And it's like, there are ways of...
Yes.
There are always ways of adapting it. Of like, it sounds like this thing's happening, but you can't see it. It depends on... And it's why lines and veils are so important, like understanding the difference between something somebody doesn't want to touch at all, something that somebody is fine with having, but not like a... explicit description of. And then I think the other thing that I think the RP Geeks does really well is when we do our safety stuff, there's also stuff you want to investigate. I want to investigate the idea of like PC betrayal. I want to investigate that. I want, there's things like that where people can, those conversations at the beginning of sessions can be like, actually, I really want to investigate the idea that my character might realize that the world's a bad place. They think it's a good place. I'd like to investigate that. That can be a conversation at the table with everybody or just with the GM. Like, boundaries doesn't just have to be, this is my hard line, do not cross it. Although that is something that should be expressed. It can also be like, hey, I'm a little bit like, this thing makes me a bit uncomfortable. And we all have those. Like, I have my own specifics of that. But actually, I'm fine with this, providing it's not like this. Yeah. I'd actually be totally fine with this if it was described in this way as opposed to this way. Or I'd be really interested in seeing this and investigating this in this safe space. Because that's the other thing that role-playing games can do, is they can allow us to see these horrible things or investigate these what in real life would be incredibly traumatic, but from a place of safety, providing you are safe and comfortable.
Absolutely.
I've definitely been able to play role-playing games in the past where I've gone in being like, oh, I'm going to investigate this thing about something that I actually find quite uncomfortable, but I've spoken to the GM and I've spoken to the players and I want to investigate it, and this feels like a safe place for me to do that. I want to play this character who's like this, and we'll see how that feels. Why not? Never anything that's deeply traumatic, because why would you?
Of course.
And I would never want to put anyone else at a table in an uncomfortable position or at risk, but it's like it's a safe space to experiment, and it should be.
Maybe playing characters that are definitely not like yourself, who could be, quote unquote, pieces of shit, and could have all these issues, and just feeling that out. But going back to the sort of almost like the social deduction, the sort of betrayal element of it, I definitely think Call of Cthulhu, like many games, can have the PvP stuff. That's absolutely, and obviously you have the added sort of insanity and madness mechanics. Yeah. But one thing I love, I think, is that there's this. Maybe you've got a different take on it than I, but like there's and actually going back to the one thing I did want to say, the character sheet also certainly the older character sheet, there's a lot of stuff, and you're like, I can't find anything, so it can be feels overwhelming. But ultimately, as you said, if you know if you find the skill, whatever number to roll under, fine.
Yeah, you can simplify it. Yeah, exactly.
It can simplify it, especially now they got the luck number thing down to just a box rather than, I don't know why they did that. But so funny. Well, one of the skills is this Cthulhu Mythos skill, which you can, it's completely zero, and then over many campaigns so that you can increase it. And I like the idea, and something that we played with a little bit with some home game where we did like one shots with the same characters. That one character became increasingly obsessed with the Cthulhu Mythos, and when it increased, and that's what they were looking towards, it was very telegraphed to the table that this person was changing, and not necessarily for the better. And so we got some really interesting scenes of like someone checking in on them, and their flat's a mess, their hair's all like this, and clearly the person, it was a clear signal, like if at some point a PvP is going to happen, this person, it's been telegraphed in advance that something has changed, and it was a really cool thing to see that happen. So it's something I would do with the Cthulhu Mythos is have that discussion of like, we want to continue doing these campaigns. That's fine. Let's telegraph it. Let's see it and see the other players being able to have a chance to react to it. Because if it comes out of the blue that, you turned out to be part of the cult all along, and it's like, I like having those obvious hints. And I think because you and I both play social deduction games, obviously most of the time you're trying to hide these things, but there's something delicious about like if you say the right line, like you throw it away, like I know certain like certain minions and demons in Blood and Clocktower, where you say a line and somebody dies, it's great. Or you accuse someone and then you die, you're like, wow, what happened? And it's like, don't know, so there's I love all that sort of stuff that you can hopefully put into role-playing games.
It's so interesting because like I think the lines that we're talking about are lines that we find in social deduction games as well. Like I say so many, it's not actually so many. I've done a few talks on like etiquette in Blood and the Clocktower and like new players and learning to play Blood and the Clocktower and that kind of thing. And the questions I get asked the most are things like about what are the lines of Blood and the Clocktower? And the truth is they're individual and you have to check in on people. And over time, if you play with the same group enough, you know them, but you should still check in. And if they're new people, then you should, ask and talk and all of those things. And that can be down to things like mechanically, how do you run madness?
Yes.
In
hilarious. Yeah, I know. It's all connected. Yeah.
It can be like, how do we feel about somebody just, again, PvP, saying that something happened that didn't?
Right.
In a private conversation. How do we feel about that? And it's so interesting because it's a tool to lie with. And we can't live in my opinion, providing it's done sensitively and in a friendly way, you can't have it that everything that says is either the evil team confirming each other or the good team confirming each other. There does have to be conflict. Otherwise it's a tool that only the good team can use, really, or the evil team can use together. So in order to balance it, that kind of has to be there. But like it's still something that needs to be checked in on. In fact, I was doing a shoot. I won't say for which game, and I won't say with who recently.
Yes, of course.
But I was doing a shoot for a board game, social deduction board game, at some point in the last year. So who knows? It could be anything.
It could be anything, yes.
But I was in direct conflict with somebody. It's one of those games where like you can check somebody's like allegiance or whatever. And I knew that I was going to have to lie my socks off because I was bad. And this person had just seen my identity as being bad. And we were going to be in direct conflict. It was my word against theirs, right?
Yes, of course.
So we begin conflict. You know, it's not what this person wanted. No, they wanted us to be on the same side, of course. But we're now in direct conflict. And we did this thing it's obviously, the other thing with this is as soon as something like that happens, whether it's in a game of Blood on the Clocktower or any game, or in a role-playing game, in any game, the conflict is obvious to everybody at the table. It's not being hidden, right? No. So there's nothing stopping you going, hey, time out for a sec. Are you okay with this?
Yes.
Is this all right with you?
In.
There is nothing wrong with that because it's not letting any secret away. Everyone knows that one of you is telling the truth and one of you is lying, or, you know, you're in conflict for some reason. There's no reason why you can't do that. That's exactly what we did in that shoot. And the answer is, yep, of course. I'm playing this up, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And you're like, great, fine, cool. Thought you were. Always just good to check so that, because it means that we're now free to really let go into that and enjoy it. You know, exactly. So it's also, that's a freeing thing as well. It's not a restrictive thing. It's actually a freeing thing because there's no world in which I ask that question and that person goes, actually, no, I'm uncomfortable with this, where I want to keep going. There's no world, you know. I don't feel free in that case. That person isn't limiting like my freedom in any way. What they're doing is they're informing me that I don't want to hurt their feelings. I would never want to do that. And so often it's those moments of check-in where if you didn't check in, you could actually end up in a position where you feel uncomfortable because you don't know if the other person's okay. Whereas when you've checked in, you absolutely do know the other person's okay. You can feel even more comfortable. And it's something that's definitely in social deduction games too. I love them a bit like how I love role-playing games because they give me the opportunity to do something I can't do in real life, which is lie. I'm not saying I can't lie in real life. No. Of course I can. In the same way, not in the same way that I can't cast Fireball. I can't cast Fireball in real life, right?
You try really hard.
I tried. It didn't work.
It didn't work.
You know, but you know what I mean? I can lie in real life, sure, but I shouldn't. And the way that I feel about it is like, I can't. I really struggle to. It would upset me hugely. But in a game, I absolutely can.
Yes.
And because it's playing the game, it's suddenly allowed in this kind of way that we found. And that's what role-playing games are about as well, is kind of finding the freedom to be able to do things that you might not be able to do in real life, or you might not want to do in real life, but it's safe in this space because it's not real.
Yeah, I love like having secret betrayers in my role-playing games, whether it's another player, whether it's myself, and it marries so well with like Blood on the Clocktower. Like I always remember like, because often when I'm on the evil team, I'm like, oh no, but then I'll just lie my socks off and weirdly, not all the time, obviously, you see me play, I'm like, but sometimes people believe me and run off. And our mutual friend Emily, there's one time we did an in-person game and she came over and I had been lying to be a character that's known as the Undertaker, and she came over, did you see so-and-so as this? And in my head I was like, oh shoot, and I went, yes, and she went, I knew it, and ran away. And I was like, well, I better go and tell everyone that I saw that person as this, and it was great. I felt so powerful in that moment, and eventually we won as the evil team. But it was wild because I know in real life I'd be like, no, I'm so sorry, I didn't. I'm evil. Please just lock me up. Put me on the.
Exactly. So, exactly, and it is empowering.
It's so empowering.
And it's fun. Like it's fun to be lied to as well. Like there are so many games I've had where I've been wrong, lost the game, or been tricked or whatever. It's delightful.
So
like
good.
There is something about like, or Emily's just pulled off this move, or Ken's just pulled off this move, or Mara's just pulled off this move, or I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, okay, I lost, boo, I'm sad about that always, because I always want to win, but like I am still here in awe, like, oh my gosh, I've never thought about playing it like that. That's so interesting. I love this. It's so much of it is about sharing space And I think Clocktower, like the way that private chats work, the way that nominations work, inevitably you share space and you can breach that. You can interrupt that. That's part of the game as well. The same way it is with role-playing games. You can breach that. You can interrupt. It has consequences, like in real life, It has consequences. It's not that no one's saying you can't. You can. It's just that it comes with consequences. And it's really interesting. I mean, by far my favorite board game. I'm not even sure if it is a board game. It kind of feels
That's
like
right.
It straddles like the grounds between board game and role playing game at this point, because you get a role at the beginning. It's just that you play it through the mechanics of a game for 90 minutes.
And there's definitely, I'm sure, in the future there's going to be like versions of Blood on the Clocktower that is Call of Cthulhu. You're all investigating. We do sometimes do it as well, where we're like, you are here. We see it through the lens of this and everything like that, and then. I've definitely played a very, very early version of it where we were like as if it was a theatre performance, and we all got like a little card that said that you are angry at this person. Before like the madness and stuff like that. So we were always able to play up those sort of like those things, even though like I'm like, well, that's my minion or whatever. Yep. So like it doesn't matter because then it's still like a performance of some sort. So it's really interesting how these sort of circles of like social deduction games and Call of Cthulhu, all role playing, it just all and improv is also all a circle really. It is all
like a step beyond that, right? A step beyond that is fiasco. You've got this set of circumstances, you've got this set of things you want, and now we play it out. That's fiasco, right? That's the next step there. And you go one step beyond that, you added some dice, you've got Honey Heist or like a bunch of the Grant Howitt one sheets, and like you're there. It is it's a slippery slope.
Once you're in, it's very hard to get out. Yes, absolutely.
And people they get into it and they treasure it. They build their lives around it. They build their weeks, their schedules around it for a reason.
Yeah, it's something that brings them joy. Holly, my last question for you before we sign off is if somebody's looking to run Call of Cthulhu for the first time, what kind of advice would you give to them? Other than like, well, I don't know if you'd say read the book, but like, other than like pick a scenario or something like that. Yeah. What tips would you give to like a first time keeper?
I'd give 3 tips. One is the safety stuff's important. Talk 100%. To your friends about it. It might feel cringy at the time. It's not. It really isn't. It'll help you all just get that out of your system and feel better about role playing. If anybody's nervous, you don't want them to have to think about that for the whole time, and you don't want to think about it for the whole time. That'd be number 1. Number 2 is don't worry about getting the rules wrong. Don't worry. And even better, play with people who don't know that you're getting the rules wrong. Oh, yeah. If you have to make up a new rule, it's at the beginning of a homebrew rule. Like, it's okay. The point is, as somebody who makes a lot of like different kinds of games, content on about a lot of different kinds of games, and I do get, caught when I get the rules wrong. You don't have to be, you're at home and no one should mind really, providing you're having fun. So if you forget how madness works and you stop asking for sanity rolls halfway through the game, don't worry about it. Yeah. If you enter combat and you can't remember how combat works, don't worry about it. Make up how you're going to deal with it. Don't worry about it. That would be my second thing, because there is a lot of pressure we put on ourselves to be experts in something before we try something for the first time. 100%. And that is the biggest barrier to trying it. Yeah. And then my final bit of advice is read the quick start rules and run the haunting, because the quick start rules are not long. No. And you might not even get it all. That's okay. Yeah. You'll get the gist of it from reading it through once. And then the haunting is a really self-explanatory and brilliant beginner scenario. Yeah. And again, get ready to adapt it, get ready to make stuff up, get ready to get things wrong. Don't worry about it. But that would be my advice. Yeah, check in safety-wise, because there are safety elements to running horror role-playing games. Don't stress about getting anything wrong. Feel free to break the rules if it means you get to play the game. Yeah. And then finally, read the quick start rules, run the haunting. Don't worry about anything else before your first go.
It's interesting how the haunting is the go-to quick start scenario and hasn't changed, whereas, say, Dungeons & Dragons has several different starter sets, and like, I know that obviously Call of Cthulhu has its own starter set, which is not necessarily the haunting, but I always find it interesting that, the haunting is the go-to one, and it just does the job. Like you said, like, it's great, you got all the little bits, and then you go, it is a house that you have to go through, and you're like, great,
perfect. It's a haunted house. It just works so well, because I think it's a haunted house. You go into it and you have assumptions immediately. You're playing a horror game, it's a haunted house. I think it limits the amount of... I'm not saying there's nothing scary in it. There are some scary things in that scenario. Yeah. But there's a lot of things that would put people off horror gaming that it doesn't have. Yeah. And as a result, it ends up being a very accessible first try, both for GMs and for players.
100%. Yeah.
There are so many great Call of Cthulhu scenarios. And I'm going to write a bunch.
Yeah.
So there's those as well. But it is a good one. I think it's a good one for a reason. I think people run it for a reason.
Yeah. Well, Holly, thank you so much for coming on and chatting to me. It feels like the time has absolutely flown by.
Oh my God, it's gone so fast.
So good. Yeah, great.
Could talk about it for hours.
I know.
So
I have to cut you off because otherwise you won't come back next time to talk about more stuff. Holly,
that's a good point.
Yeah. Holly, before you go, where can people find you on the internet if you'd like to be found? If you've got any upcoming projects you'd like to talk about?
Oh boy, do I have an upcoming project. You can find me at Holly Likes Games on everything. Apart from Twitch, where I'm Holly Likes Games 13. I live stream mainly video games at the moment. It will have finished by the time you hear this, but Strange Antiquities. I love puzzlers, I love Pokemon, and I love Zelda. Those are the three things I mainly stream. And singing sometimes too. Speaking of...
What?
Like the hugest project I've ever basically worked on. I can't believe I'm getting to do it. I'm making a Blood on the Clocktower album called The Moonwitch Script, which comes out really soon, like really, really so soon. And I wrote it years and years and years ago. Like I actually was editing a video today where I'm talking about it cryptically, like about a year and a half ago. I'm like, there's this album, one day I might release it. It's got 12 songs. And I'm talking about the Blood on the Clocktower album. And I've kept it secret basically for years because I wanted to make it and I didn't want to tell people about it in case I never got to or in case I wanted to do it in a certain way. And here I am making it. TPI are essentially executive producing it. And it's got 12 tracks. It's called The Moonwitch Script. It's based on a custom called The Moonwitch Script that I've made. And it has 12 characters in it like it's a 12-player game. And I've put those 12 tokens in the bag. So it's got the right amount.
Cool.
The right amount in like with little asterisks next to it of townsfolk, outsiders, minions, and demon. And I'm so excited. I genuinely I keep saying this and I haven't received any flack for this yet.
No.
But I say it because I mean it. Yeah. It is the best writing I've ever written. They're the best songs I've ever made. I'm so excited about sharing them. The music is honestly just like my favorite thing I've ever written. And I can't believe I get to share it. So that's where I'm at. I'm so excited for you. There's been a whole buzz about it online. So I'm looking forward to it. You've got a live show happening in London, I think, as well. So we do.
Give us some details about that.
Yes, and it'll probably be just ahead of the launch of the songs as well on streaming services. So at the moment you can buy tickets to come to the London show in person or online. We've got live streaming as well. And I'll be playing most, if not all of the songs. I need to work out exactly how many I'm going to play. But I do have a set list that I'm working on. And it'll be the first place you can hear most of these songs before they go anywhere else. And I've come up with fun ideas of how to perform a bunch of them and things to do. And also, if you come to the London show, you can also pre-order yourself a 7-inch LP of the Minion LP, which is a 7-inch red vinyl, like a Minion, like a red token. And it's got Scarlet Woman on side A and Witch on side B, which are the two lead singles really from the album. And
that's so cool.
It's going to be cool. I can't believe it's all of those words as they come out of my mouth feel magical. I can't believe it. But come to the London show in person or online. I would love to see you there. It's going to be great. And it's going to be just a very, very exciting vocal performance for me. I've got loads of really cool stuff to work on and look forward to with it. So
incredible. Well, I'll definitely be there through streaming. Unfortunately, I'm not in the UK, but I will be there supporting my life. And I'll put all the links in the show notes as well.
Thank you so much.
Of course, because heck yeah, it's so exciting to have a friend who's being super creative and doing something. I'm like, oh my God, I know all of these things and I love it. So I want to absolutely get the links out there for people to listen to.
So much that we've talked about today. And there was a bit where I was kind of talking about how kind of having a role is kind of easier to write from and talk about. One of the reasons why this album is here and it was made, it wasn't on purpose at all. It started because I was sitting in the shoes of the damsel in my brain and I wrote the damsel song. And being in her shoes for a minute, I could just feel what she would feel in those moments, like I was taking on a role, and that the whole album has just spun itself like that. Essentially, it's just I wonder how the Scarlet Woman actually feels about this, or I wonder how the Witch really is. And they're all very different. The genres that they cover are quite different, and their individuality, honestly, Sometimes I don't feel like I wrote them. I feel like they came and sat with me. Genuinely, I
was just here for the vibes, and I'm
the
here.
witch just came in and was like, "This is what I want to say."
There we go.
Okay,
Goodbye. Yes,
like,
absolutely.
Right. So it's so much of the writing of it has been really similar to like role playing or GMing for me. And I can't wait.
Oh, amazing. Well, thank you so much, Holly. I can't wait for all the stuff. Like I said, all the links will be in the show notes. We'll have to have you back on again in future to talk about more role-playing games. Because
please.
I'm sure there's loads of horror ones I can be like, I'm sure Holly would like this, and I'll send you across to that.
And also, there's loads of other stuff I like to play. Like I play a lot of Grant Howitt stuff. I'm about to start running Thirsty Sword Lesbians for the first time.
Oh, well,
run for ages.
Let's get you on there then. Yeah, let's absolutely chat about that after recording. But thank you so much, Holly, for coming. Thanks so much for listening, everyone out there. We'll be back next week for another episode of the DM's Book Club. But until then, friends, we'll see you on the flip side. Bye. Bye-bye.